What's your take on on-chain effects? Do you think that this is gonna take the on-chain market as a whole? When is this gonna happen? How is this gonna impact different regions in Latin America?
You're not going to compete against the global players if you don't, right? It's like you've got to be competing at it's not even like Silicon Valley anymore. It's like the Shanghai, Shenzhen, Bangalore level of energy and excitement, because that's like next level, right?
10% of remittances in India, Nigeria, and Mexico are processed through stablecoins or through crypto rails. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Frontera, the podcast where we analyze what's happening in crypto in Latin America. I'm Ab, the co-founder and CEO of Bando and Espacio Crypto, and I'm with my great friend Kush, founder of Odisea Labs. Man, how's everything? What's happening this week in Odisea?
GM. What's happening, man? So much happening simultaneously all at once. Some public, some not. But I think the really exciting thing is the base batches program, and that kicks off in 8 days. And so we'll be, again, as I've mentioned before on this podcast, working super closely to accelerate the Latin American teams going through that, man. So yeah, that's got a workshop today on AI agents and vibe coding. And man, we recorded an incredible podcast with Santi yesterday. I thought was awesome, and lots of learnings and reflections there. How about you, man? What's going on in the Espacio Crypto Bando world?
A lot of exciting things. We launched last week. We have this sense of we are in the path of winning. You know, when that vibe hits, you've got momentum and you just need to keep pushing. And the episode with Santiago Roel with Santi was, I think, one of our best yet. It's a 1 hour conversation about inversion capital, why or how they're following this private equity playbook with a blockchain. Why are they starting in Latin America? That's dropping next week, or well, this week, next week. Today, this is released on Friday. Next week, we'll share this the pod with Santi. And man, I'd also like to start talking about the newsletter that we published this week. Last week, we had Juan Di from Kappa, and we did this really detailed research of on-chain effects, because I think that a lot of people outside of Latin America doesn't realize, and outside of Mexico doesn't realize how big of an opportunity is the on-chain effects market. So we identified in this newsletter, and I'd love to hear your takes on the different startups that we're looking at. We created this. We're starting to create these tables that summarize what's happening in the region, and the one that I'm showing right now in the screen is a complete mapping of the on-chain effects market in Mexico. And what do we call on-chain effects is the way to build liquidity between stablecoins and fiat currencies in like using on-chain products. So something like Bitso creates a lot of liquidity, something like Nonco creates a lot of liquidity. And on the second layer, there's the B2B payments. And there's a big competition in Mexico on that specific category. We have Kappa, we have Alfred, we have Ridian. Some of these companies are backed by YC. Some of them are backed by the top VCs in the world. And then we have stablecoin issuance. We have Dave from Etherfuse a couple of episodes back, and also the guys at Braille. They're doing a really interesting job. And I think that I really love the research that we're doing, because I haven't seen anything like this, where we consolidate a whole industry and we analyze the value chain and we just deploy information. What's your take on on-chain effects? Do you think that this is going to take the on-chain market as a whole? When is this going to happen? How is this going to impact different regions in Latin America?
I mean, I think every single asset will be tokenized, right? And specifically currencies will be tokenized. We've talked previously about a timeline of 10 years before 100% of remittances are processed on chain. And I'd probably argue that that's a very similar timeline to when we'll see all FX markets come on chain as well. But I think this is like, it's stablecoins generally have become this red ocean, right? And everyone's trying to compete, and there's a ton of teams doing massive raises with incredibly talented people as well on the back end. So it is hyper competitive, and good luck to anyone building in this space, right? And I'm really glad there's a lot of competition, because it means we'll see a lot of teams sort of come out and push the frontier here. So yeah, how are you seeing sort of on-chain effects, and particularly I think for the region, right? It's super relevant. So give me your takes
Yeah.
on this big, very thorough research.
I think that there's I have also some alpha. I cannot say names yet, but there's a big company launching on the on-chain FX market. Some people that I know that when you look at their resumes, they are some of the best builders in the industry, and they decided to tackle this challenge. So some people from BlackRock, some people that work at the top crypto companies in the region, some like really talented engineers are addressing this market. They are gonna announce their big funding round, seed round, in a couple of months, I think. And this shows how exciting it is. And also, when you see someone from these big banks, from the BlackRocks of the world, the Goldman Sachs of the world, deploying a product, you should get excited. And that's happening in Mexico. That's happening in this market that we're analyzing. So really interesting to see. I also think that talking with Juan the other day, we're friends, right? So the other day we were just chatting in over the phone, and he was telling me some like things that they're doing, and I told him, dude, I'm really excited that I think that Juan is one of the most crypto native founders in this specific vertical. And I said, I'm really happy that it seems that you have a crypto native premium, because you're like delivering really fast, and some of the founders in other companies are not as crypto native as you are, as Juan is. And I think that that has a premium that VCs didn't realize, like traditional VCs didn't realize, but it's so obvious. I don't know. What do you think about this crypto native premium? Is it a thing, or am I just making it
100%.
up?
No, 100%. I mean, I think Fundy's not only like crypto native, but I think he's also got a lot of fire in him, and I think it's one of the things that we oftentimes think about too. And one of the big gaps, again, that we work with a ton of founders across the region. One of the things I'm always like pushing founders to move forward on. I'm like, dude, come on, you gotta have a little bit more gusto and really drive in you, because otherwise
Ambition
you're
also.
not ambition. You're not going to compete against the global players if you don't, right? It's like you've got to be competing at it's not even like Silicon Valley anymore. It's like the Shanghai,
Yeah,
Shenzhen, Bangalore level of energy and excitement, because that's like next level, right? Like people, the builders from India are super hungry, for example, like way more, I would argue, than a lot of builders from other parts of the world. So I definitely think that like that's the level that we need to be competing on, and that simply isn't the case, unfortunately. And I just did a podcast, in fact, last week, where I talked a lot about the sort of cultural nuances in Latin America that point to why that might be. But I think it's one of the things I personally really appreciate about Wandi's profile. So how do you think about sort of like competition and really like pushing 100x harder than everybody else?
yeah. I think that one important thing is that as a founder, when no one can ignite your fire, you are responsible of igniting your own fire. And I think that a lot of people don't realize that. They look for mentors, and they look for people, and they look how to get the best knowledge to deploy a startup. And the reality is that you just need to feel it. Today I was listening to an Naval podcast, and he said, if it's not taking your sleep, you don't want it strong enough. Uh, and I can relate to that. I mean, it's like sometimes I'm just in bed thinking of, I don't know, Bando takes my sleep, right? And I think that you can sit, you can left curve it and say, oh no, but you need to rest and have like work-life balance, or you just do the work, right? So I think that
You've
in
got to
Latin
be
America,
absolutely fanatical, man, about the idea. Like
yeah,
literally, you've got to go to bed thinking about it. It's the first thing you think about when you're in your, some sort of meditative state. Like it's got to be coming up there constantly. It's like,
definitely.
Olisa, the programs we do, our big mission is just never, probably like not 5 minutes goes by without me like running through something related to Olisa. So, and I'm
Yeah.
sure like for you, it's exactly the same.
It's exactly the same. And also I think it's important to have creative outlets. I don't know, writing, podcasting, whatever, because also if you because those creative outlets are like multipliers to your idea. If you're writing about, I don't know, philosophy, then And if you're obsessed with your startup, you'll say, oh, okay, this fits and I can implement this. Because if you are just thinking about the thing that you do, you fall into these biases and confirmation biases. But yeah, I think it's really exciting because I think that in Latin America we can do a lot of push, not only in product building, in technical profiles, but also in mindset. And we have, like, you and I have a winning mindset, and we should help people deploy or grow that winning mindset, basically in their companies. And man, I'd like to go through some quick news. I think that this week was not really active, maybe because it's Semana Santa, it's Easter and that's a big thing in Latin America. But the first one is a tweet of a friend that I think that we should invite Felipe to Frontera. He's building basically remittances and payments on WhatsApp using Bitcoin and stablecoins. That's a really interesting product. We chat about Felix Pago $75 million raise a couple of weeks ago, but he tweeted this report from Artemis that says that around of 10% of remittances in India, Nigeria, and Mexico are processed through stablecoins or through crypto rails. And this is really exciting because these are three of the biggest markets for remittance inflows. And just stablecoins make sense. And I think that in Mexico, specifically talking, this is real, but the user, I think that Felix Pago is the only product that is doing this successfully to the final user. All these premium and all these efficiencies right now are being gained by remittance companies like the MoneyGrams of the world. So what do you think about when will the users see the benefits of stablecoins in remittances?
But I think it's not like one of the really interesting insights from the conversation with Santi was like, these things aren't going to be at the forefront of the way that users interact with these different protocols. It's like all crypto enabled. Like crypto is literally just in the background. And I just saw this really interesting chart actually that I just was thinking a lot about, and it sort of speaks to, I think, one of the big problem sets that we oftentimes think about with Ethereum, and it is the notion that like people really care about running their nodes, people really care about decentralization, people really care about, sort of the value in the self-sovereignty of Ethereum, but really they just want to send like remittance payments like back and forth very cheaply, right? So if you pull up this tweet I just sent from Ryan Connor, he's head of research at Blockworks, and it's a chart that I think is really alarming if you are, big Ethereum believer, and really exciting if you're a Solana believer, and really exciting if you generally love crypto as well, right? So what this chart shows is app activity over the course of basically the last month or so on a number of different blockchains. And what do we see here? Solana has a 70% share over the course of the last month, right? Like this is really, actually, sorry, over the course of the last year, correction, over the course of the last year. Even more interesting. So clearly, like, why this is exciting is because it just shows that we're seeing sort of these really fast, really cheap blockchains sort of take over, and it sort of goes to your question of like, what do users care about, right? I know you guys did this Apex event with Solana in Mexico City. Tell me more about how you're seeing this.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there are two things in Solana, and maybe as that I'm really passionate about like the history of technology and stuff. But when a really innovative technology comes by, it generally attracts people at the fringes, right? And we've talked about it. And people at the fringes could be either people that hadn't have the chance for these opportunities, or maybe people with not the best incentives. For example, in Polaroid, one of the best or of the initial implementations was actually people taking nudes because because they didn't need to go to like a photography shop to rebuild their photographs, right? And that's kind of weird, but that actually was a big adoption for Polaroid. And interpolating that to Solana, I think that it attracted a lot of meme coin traders that maybe, I don't know, it's pure speculation. But if you build up from that, you attract a lot of volume. And now Solana is big in stable coins. They're doing a massive deployment in Latin America. They just hired a new head of growth that we will invite to Frontera. And what I think is, yeah, the user won't see if it's Solana, if it's Arbitrum, if it's Mantle, but basically that's why the founders are the most important people in crypto, because we are the ones who decide where to deploy, right? And today I think that having a like you should be chain agnostic, um, unless you're building like deep infrastructure, like something like Jito or something like Jupiter, right? In that sense, it makes sense. But in Latin America, I think that we are historically great at implementing new technologies for this market instead of building specific global technologies. So as a LatAm founder, we should be looking at the different technologies out there, the different blockchains, and how to implement them. I think that that's the way that I approach it. How do you talk about this to your founders at Odisea?
Yeah, I think it's all, again, it just comes down to like, what does user utility look like, right? And how are you solving the hair on fire problem that is 10x better, right? So I think that's really the fundamental premise here behind every single startup that anyone is working on. And again, like, it just goes back to Santi's whole thesis as well, as like, it's just crypto enabled. Like, crypto's just in the background. It's invisible. It's really not. You don't have to shove crypto down people's faces. In fact, you shouldn't. In the same way that SMTP isn't shoved down my face, and HTTPS, and I just want to go on, I don't know, Twitter and see and know, and maybe I don't even have to know that the thing is secured by a lot of cryptography behind it, right? So, or my WhatsApp messages, are in theory sort of safe and protected, right? So I think that's the way I always express this to founders is like, don't try to shove crypto down people's faces. Like, great, you've got account abstraction and multi-party computation. Like, the user shouldn't even know what those words mean, right? In fact, it should just be a feature that is embedded so deeply and so natively into your application that doesn't really matter. But I think there's been a lot of discourse around application level builders too recently on Twitter, and how, yeah, just Ethereum's role, and particularly the EF's role in pushing and supporting app level builders. Like, I'm curious how you think about that as someone who builds in the Ethereum ecosystem, works and has explored with the Solana Foundation as well too. So yeah, tell me more about sort of that difference that you see.
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I don't know. It feels like the vibe is changing around Ethereum these days, but it's really simple. The Solana Foundation moves like a startup, and the Ethereum Foundation moves like an NGO, and I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? When we think of the Ethereum Foundation, it's more similar to an NGO than to a startup. And for me, it's really interesting because I worked at the UN, at the Food and Agriculture Organization, for like during my student years, and I loved it in the idea, but hated it in the reality, because I mean, the UN sounds like really sexy, right? You think that you're working at this big building with different flags and people around the world, but basically they are just a governmental organization, and it's really hard to move. But to do anything, you need to ask for permission. So that's what specifically to me drove me apart from these like NGOs, and one of the biggest NGOs in the world, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, right? And interacting with the Ethereum Foundation in the past has felt like that. And it's hard, and I love Ethereum, and like I love the philosophy behind it. I'm a big user, I'm a holder, all of that things. But the difference is what, like, being pretty vocal, talking with the Solana Foundation, they have a winning strategy, or yeah, they just say, what do you need to win? How can we help you winning? And we're here, we play to win. I was listening to Michael Dell's founder podcast episode, and he says something like this: "Play nice but win." And I love it. I love that. I mean, I'm the one in when I play soccer. I'm the one that it's like kind of chill. I'm not aggressive, but I mean, I want to win, and I want to score. So I think that that's the main difference that I've seen. What's your experience? Because you've interacted a lot with the Ethereum Foundation, but I don't know if you've interacted a lot with the Solana Foundation.
Yeah, it's very different rhythm, very different priorities, and very different mindsets as well. And I think the EF generally has this notion of subtraction. They have this perspective that there are other players in the ecosystem that should be taking over and really kind of leading the charge when it comes to accelerating a lot of development in Ethereum. But the incentives are completely broken at Ethereum, unfortunately, given sort of this roll-up centric roadmap as well. So it's like a shame to see, to be honest, given where like what Ethereum's true potential is and also its head start, right? But I do feel that the Solana Foundation generally is like much more dynamic and much more agile when it comes to pushing forward, right? So we'll see how that
Yeah.
all unfolds.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, why don't we keep wrapping up the news here and
Perfect.
keep on
Yeah.
moving?
So some quick final news. This one is really interesting. Bitso launched their Euro ramps. So basically, in their B2B side, you can now use Bitso Business to do money movements between Latin America, where they have liquidity, Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, and the euro. And why is this important? Because first of all, they're not the first to do this. Dollar App already has it, and it makes a lot of sense. Two of the founders of Dollar App are Spanish. They also see the market. They understand the market. They are ex-Revoluts, and now Bitso is competing there. So I think that is exciting that competition is coming along the different sectors of the on-chain market, on-chain FX thesis, and this just validates our thesis. I mean, FX will move on chain, and in order to do payments, you need to have liquidity, and basically that's on-chain FX. What's your take here?
Yeah,
Why
I
do
mean,
Bitso launches this?
yeah, actually the remittance corridor between there's a lot of Latin American migrants, right, to Europe, namely Spain. So I think this makes like a lot of sense, right? And I generally think that these markets are getting saturated. Your LTV as well is going to be much higher for a European user ultimately too. So I think this is a good move on Bitso, and we saw this similarly to Nubank, right, where they started in Brazil and then they expanded. They're now expanding to the Middle East. They're expanding to Europe as well. So these markets get saturated. One of the big things that oftentimes is really frustrating as a Latin American player is like it's a really small fragmented market, and therefore can you tap into the entire region across LatAm given the sort of regulatory hurdles. So I think like they're basically sort of supercharging that. The Europe offers you a unified regulatory framework, which in theory, so long as you can get cleared in the EU, you should be good to move forward elsewhere.
Yeah,
So I think this makes sense.
perfect. Moving on. Also, the thing that we say, Kush, there's infinite demand for tokenized dollars in Latin America. And here's just another data point about this. In Colombia, the 48% of crypto purchases are stablecoins, while Bitcoin is just 16%. And maybe people in the US or developed markets don't understand this because we see stablecoins as money and more stable money, not necessarily an investment. And that's why it's so important for Latin America. And this is just another data point, and it's just so obvious. And also in the episode that we recorded with Santi from Inversion this week, this is another data point that basically it's a great point for his thesis. And also the thing that I say constantly, there's infinite demand for dollars in Latam, and the best way to obtain that is through stablecoins.
Totally. Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is like unsurprising. Colombia's gone through a massive shift in inflation as well. The tariffs that were briefly placed and removed and placed again, I think put the Colombian peso through a roller coaster ride. So it makes a lot of sense. People are fleeing to US dollars for protection.
Perfect. So the final thing that I want to share with the Frontera community, what's this, man?
Yeah, let's go. We're doing a little party with Steffi, Guava, Almendra, Mantle, Biosin, and Elisa on the 2nd of May. So we just announced this. And so I'll be playing some tunes in Mexico City, and everyone is invited. Whoever is there. You can check out the Elisa Labs Twitter to get the link and apply to join. We'll think about if we let you in or not. I'm just kidding. If you're a Frontera listener, you're guaranteed entry to the party.
Amazing. And dude, are you so this was really surprising for me. Some of the biggest news of LATAM this week. you are a DJ?
Yeah, man. I love spinning beats. It's super fun. It's part of it's also part of the thesis, right, with Elisa, because it's also sort of a cultural movement, right? And so um and a lot of the music that I play is sort of this what I call Latin house, right? So it's this infusion of techno and Latin
Mm,
sounds. So it'll be cumbia, bachata, salsa mixed with techno. So it's really fun, very danceable. So we'll have a good time.
dude, I'm so excited for this. I'll definitely see you there. And if you're a Frontora listener, you should go and read our report of on-chain effects. It's an amazing report. I think that we're doing the best research about crypto in Latin America in English. We are the best at it. You should go read it. And Kush, as always, thank you for another episode. You can find Kush at 0xkush in Twitter. You can find me at AbrahamCR. And dude, see you next week. Listen to the episode with Santi this Tuesday. It's a banger. Maybe one of the top episodes that we've recorded. We're bringing some great founders. We have a banger roster of people that's coming. So yeah, excited for everything that we're building, man. Thank you.
Let's go. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.